Okay. So Shavua Tov, everyone. It's good to see you all. And we are getting ready for our class in Halacha, which is a good Vachar of Shimon. We start, of course, with our weekly story of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, we know a story is not just a piece of information, so to say, where we don't we didn't know the story and now we know the story, so now we've heard the story once, and that's good. Certain stories and many stories are just like that, a story that we tell over and over again, because it's the telling of the story and hearing the story, not the information of the story, that's important, especially when it comes to the story of the Baal Shem Tov. So you could say, in theory, you could say the same story every Motzaei Shabbos, every Saturday night, the same story of the Baal Shem Tov, and still the idea of saying a story of the Baal Shem Tov, it's the connection to the story. So we're going to tell a story that's well known, the story of the Baal Shem Tov of a couple, a childless couple that comes to the Holy Baal Shem Tov, and pious couple, strong in their performance of Torah mitzvahs, and then they're giving tzedakah, charity, and helping the poor and community, strong community members, and involved in everything that's connected to the holy community's efforts in strengthening different things of Judaism in the community, but was unfortunately not to be blessed with children. So they've heard of the Holy Baal Shem Tov, who was a big tzaddik and the founder of the Hasidim, and of course also performed many miracles for people like Moshe and Eliyahu Navi. And they come to the Baal Shem Tov and they tell the Baal Shem Tov that we've davened, we've prayed, we've given extra tzedakah, we've taken on extra mitzvahs in order to be blessed to have children. We even did, of course, we have to do is the hishtadlus. We did the medical treatments that would help us possibly conceive a child. And we did not have so far the blessing of a child, and we want to ask the Baal Shem Tov to bless us with a child. So Baal Shem Tov sees this wonderful, beautiful couple and closes his eyes like he would. It says the Baal Shem Tov would have Elias and Neshama. He would elevate quickly to the highest of worlds in different chambers of the Garden of Eden. They say, a side note, the Baal Shem Tov once made a tefillah, a prayer, that when he enters the higher realms, he should be able to still stay focused and still see and listen to people in this world. Because when you're in the higher world, you're focusing in the higher world. How could you hear what people are telling you in this world? You want to be able to be connected simultaneously to this world. Even if you elevate to the higher world, you shouldn't disconnect from people talking to him to be able to communicate. So he shoots up to the higher worlds and he looks and he examines and he checks and he rechecks over and over again, and his face is aflame, and he, after many minutes of contemplation and checking and going from different chambers and mamish trying to see what he could do, he comes down, the Holy Baal Shem Tov comes down back to this, so to say, to the presence of this couple. He opens his eyes and he says, "I'm very sorry. You're wonderful people. You've done so many good things. It's not a punishment. It's just, there's nothing I could do. You're not meant to have children." And the husband starts to cry and the woman starts to cry, and she says, "No, I will not accept. You're a tzaddik." And at tzaddik it says, "Tzaddik goizer v'kadosh baruch hu mekayim." When a tzaddik makes a decree, Hashem even is, so to say, forced to listen to the blessing and the decree of the tzaddik. You have to decree. You have to bless us with a child. I won't accept a no for an answer. Hashem Tov closed his eyes again, and he says, "Okay, you'll have a child. By next year, you'll have a child." And sure enough, they were so excited. The husband kisses the Baal Shem Tov's hands, and they're so thankful, and she's showering blessings on the Baal Shem Tov, and they come home back to their town. A few months later, they are blessed, and she's conceived a child. And after 9 months, she has little Jewish Tov, telling the story of the Baal Shem Tov. She has the child. She has a young boy, and so she's so excited, and the community is excited for them. They were strong members of the community. Everyone knew their story and the miracle of the Baal Shem Tov, the blessing of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov says, and they start raising the child. He's a fantastic child. He's so smart and clever, and he's almost like a mature child. And at 1 year old, he was talking and walking, and just that he was so advanced, and they were so felt not just that they were blessed with the child, So to be blessed with such a special child, and getting ready for his second birthday, they figured already he's needs a tutor and he needs to learn, and this would be a good time to bring, like Hannah went and brought her son to the Mishkan. So too, we're going to bring their son to the Baal Shem Tov and show him the blessing that he blessed them with. This is the child, right? The Chana says, "This is the child that I davened for," and the mother of Samuel. And then one morning they come in before his second birthday, and they realize he's motionless. And as much as they tried to wake up the child, he had passed away in his sleep. And the parents were destroyed and broken, and the community was broken, and the Levaya, the funeral was held in every single member closed their shop and their work, and everyone came to participate in the horrible sadness of this family, and sat with the family throughout the 7 days of Shiva, of mourning. On the 8th day after Shiva, they both pack their bags and they jump into the wagon. They have to go to the Baal Shem Tov. What's the story here? So when they come to the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov says, "Listen, this soul, this son that you had, was a tremendous tzaddik, very righteous soul that saved thousands of people, but he had a tikkun, he had a little fixing that he needed to come down to this world for 2 years. And when I saw how much and how desirable you both were to have a child, I realized you would be the perfect parents to host this young boy for the 2 years. And now you should know that you've hosted one of the great righteous tzaddikim of all time, and you've helped him reach his tikkun, his fixing, and that's the story. But here he says, listen, I want to tell you the whole story. Let's sit down and listen." He says there was a king in a faraway place that his wife, his queen, was not able to have a child. And they tried everything and all the medicines and all the treatments and asked everyone to pray to their religion. So they asked all the locals to pray to their religion, and of course the Jews to pray to their God. And she still was not conceiving. So one of the ministers, a raging anti-Semite, said to the king, the reason you're not having a child is because the Jews are not really praying. Even if they're pretending like they're praying, but they don't care. If you really threatened to expel them and punish them and kill them, you'll see they're going to be able to pray to their God properly, and you'll have a child. So he issued such a decree that if they don't have a child within 30 days, he's expelling the Jews from the land. And the Jews didn't know what to do. I mean, they prayed like everyone else prayed. I mean, so the mamish fast, called a tzom klali, a fast, and they fasted and they tried. And in heaven, there was a big uproar. What should they do? And so there was a soul, a very lofty soul, who said, you know what, I will go down and become the child of this king. I'll become a Gentile child in order to save the community. And so this child was born, and he was also a brilliant child. And the parents hired a priest to be the educator of this child. The priest had one condition: 2 hours a day. The priest said, no one's allowed to disturb me, not even the king, no one. I lock myself in my room. I need my own time. And if you agree to that, I'll teach your son. And he teaches his son everything there's to teach in education of life, of theology, of religion, of ideas, education, and math and science and astronomy. Everything he teaches them. Everything's a child who takes in everything. And the child, Pashad, loved his teacher. His teacher was a source of information. He was so smart. He was able to absorb everything. One day, but he knew that the teacher had 2 hours a day that he locks himself in his room, and it disturbed him. Why does this teacher have 2 hours a day that he doesn't know what his teacher does? He has to know everything about his teacher. So he snuck into the room and hid very well, and not to make a sound. And he sees his teacher comes in, and he checks the whole room, makes sure no one's hiding in there. And then he locks the door, and he starts to remove all the crosses from the wall, takes all the crosses off his person, puts everything in a box, takes the box, places it on the windowsill outside the room. And then he takes this shawl, this white shawl, and he wraps himself in it, and he's crying, and he puts it on him, and then he puts on these 2 boxes on his head and his hand, and he's swaying, and he seems to be praying. and singing in a language he'd never heard before, and crying and pleading in his prayers, and he didn't understand what this was. But in the meantime, the child made a little sound, and the teacher heard it, panicked, took off his tefillin, took everything off, wrapped it up, put it away, and he found the prince and said, "What are you doing here?" He says, "It's my private time." He says, "What's this? He goes, "You can't tell anyone." He goes, "If you don't tell me what it is, I'm going to tell everyone." So he had no choice, and he told him that he was forced to convert as a Jew and to Christianity, and he became a priest, but he was still, of course, remained faithful to his faith. And these are 2 hours where he's Jewish. He's able to daven and pray. So the child says, "I have to know everything about being a Jew." And the child becomes well educated in Yiddishkeit and Torah. He learns everything. He says, "I need to become Jewish. I can't stay a Christian. I have to become Jewish. I have to join the Jewish faith. I have to join what my teacher is." So they make a plan. They go on a trip to further the education, and they basically disappear from the king and queen. And the Baal Shem Tov says this young prince ends up becoming one of the great sages of the Jewish people, a great righteous person. And he lived a whole life of lofty life and a teacher. But when he came up to heaven, he was such a great soul because his whole soul was a sacrifice. He agreed, he was a Jewish soul that came down, he agreed to save the community. But he said with all his greatness, the 2 years that he was nursing from his mother, which was a non-Jew, and the care of and being born by a non-Jewish woman, so he needed to rectify that, to really get his soul 100%. So he prayed they decided that you have to find the right couple that will bring him into this world for 2 years. So he should have a Jewish birth and have a Jewish nursing from a Jewish mother, like Moshe Rabbeinu. And that would be his tikkun. And you were chosen because of your burning desire to have a child. You were the right parents to bring this great righteous tzaddik back into the world for 2 years. And God bless you. And there's different versions to the end of the story. I've seen versions where the Baal Shem Tov told him that if they continue to take children to kiss the Sefer Torah, I think it's the same story. They'll be blessed again with a child, and I think the couple did have a child again at a second stage in their life. It's a story of the Baal Shem Tov. It's very well known. It's a very well-known story of the Baal Shem Tov, but we don't tell stories of the Baal Shem Tov because we don't know the stories. We tell the whole story. Just telling the story itself is the story. All right, let's bring up the text and learn.
It's also, yeah.
Go ahead.
Just like wondering if we could dedicate this class to my mom because it's her second yard site tonight and tomorrow.
Ooh, absolutely. We definitely. So what's your mom's name?
So it's Penina Bas Avraham Mordechai.
Penina Bas Avraham Mordechai, her neshama shav aliyah, and may she be a Melis Yosher, a good advocate for her family, especially you, Ariel, and will watch over you and bless you. I'm sure she's schlepping a tremendous nachas from you, all your efforts you do for community work. And may again her neshama have an aliyah and have a lichtiga Gan Eden. Thank you for
Amen.
Thank you for connecting us to her yard site.
Okay. Amen. Yeah, sure. You're welcome. Yep, thanks.
Okay, so we're learning. We have 15 minutes. We're going to learn Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, chapter 18, the laws of Shemoneh Esrei. We have a few more weeks until the time changes that we could do this class. So the halacha says like this: Zman tefillah sashachar. What the tefillah? When we say tefillah, we mean over here the Amidah, the Shemoneh Esrei. So we learned before that, of course, everyone knows you open your siddur and you have from the morning blessings, and then you have the karbanot, the sacrifices, and then we say the early tefillah, the hodu, according to the different nusach of how that goes. Then we have the Baruch Shamar, which is known as the Psuki, the Zimmer, that goes all the way through Yishtabach, which we learned about. And then we have the blessings for the Shema and the Shema. And then is the what we call the C, like the height of the prayer, which is when we stand silently with the minyan and we say the Amidah, the standing Shemoneh Esrei, the 18 blessings, 19. And so that is, when we say tefillah, we mean the Shemoneh Esrei. And that the aim is to say the Shemoneh Esrei exactly at Nate's Hachama as the sun shines. So anything you're davening before is giving yourself time to be able to start the Shemoneh Esrei exactly at Nate's. So if you go to a Nate's minyan, you're going to see the time consciousness that they have. and a lot of them will have clocks that are running by super seconds, not just seconds, to know exactly what time you should start Shemoneh Esrei. It's not like around 6:30 or 5:30 in the morning. It's exactly 5:31 and 13 seconds exactly, and parts. They try to get it exact in eighths. So therefore, they plan out in a good Nate's minion. They'll have that the Chazan has pre-planned where he should be holding at this point, that point, meaning when do we start Hodu, when do we start Baruch Shomer, when should we say Yishtabach, when should we say Shema. If you keep according to the time schedule, and everyone davens at the right appropriate time, you will reach the Shemoneh Esrei exactly at the time that's Nate's. And now Nate's changes every single day. Every single day it changes depending on the winter and the summer. It's either the mornings are getting earlier or the mornings are getting later. So now we already turned, the clock has turned, meaning to say that the mornings are already starting to get earlier. So every day it's a drop earlier than it was the day before. So mitzman tefillah shachar mitzvasa sheyaskal neitzachama. We say the Shemoneh Esrei with the nates, with the sun shining. Because there's a verse to support this that says Yiraucha im shamesh. So they will fear you when the sun shines. Fear you when the sun shines is referring to the tefillah of Shemoneh Esrei. Okay, now this is the question that comes up a little bit. That what happens again in the winter, and still places, let's say in Seattle in the north, where the winter, the sun shines, the Neit Zacham in the winter could go deep into 7 o'clock. I mean, it could sometimes that the Neit itself is close to 8 o'clock. Most people want to be on their way to work at 8 o'clock. So could you have to, so you're not allowed really, so in the summer, it's like, it's nice to daven Nates early, but in the winter, Nates is actually late. And so in Eretz Yisrael Eretz Yisrael is kind of closer to the equator, so we never get closer. It never gets, Nates is never, I don't believe Nates is any later than 6:45 in the morning. But in the north, like in Seattle, where some of you are, or even in New York, especially even further in Canada and other places in Europe, the nates could be deep into the morning because it doesn't get light until earlier. And especially according to those who have, there's a plan, let's say in Seattle, they don't plan on changing the clock, that if that ever goes through, it's going to really be dark at 8 o'clock in the morning. So how early can you daven the Shemoneh Esrei if you want to? So he says, B'di'evet, you can daven from when the Amidah Shachar rises, from when the daybreak starts. But when Amidah Shachar is also not clear. We spoke before, Mishiakir, you could only put on your talsin film from when you could tell the person who you know within a certain space. So that's not exactly, Amidah Shachar is not exactly always the Mishiakir. So there's a time of, as it's getting lighter before the sun shines, nates. So, but before Amidah Shachar, you cannot daven. So how long? But how long can you daven from nates, or if you have to from Amidah Shachar? How much into the day can you daven? At shlisha yom, 1/3 of the day. You have to remember 1/3 of the day is shas manis. It's not a clock time. It's a Jewish time, and the Jewish time is every day is 12 hours, and every night is 12 hours. So if in the winter you have, let's say, our hours would be only 8 light hours, so you have to divide those 8 hours by 12. So an hour would be, 45, 35 minutes. So up into 1/3 of the day, which means the first 4 hours of Shas Manis is when you could daven. V'osir lihis acher yoiser umikol makom midiyaved im avar v'his acher yoiser. So he says, first he says, v'osir lihis acher yoiser. It's forbidden to go past 1/3 of the day. He says, however, nevertheless, if you did do it, you're not allowed to, but if you did do it, even even if you did it intentionally, you could daven until the first half of the day. Again, the first 6 hours of Shas Manis, 6 hours in the winter is not the same 6 hours in the summer. Although you will not get the reward of davening Hello, Aaron, that tefillah in its proper time. Sfar, he says, nevertheless, schar kitfila miu ika. there is a little bit of reward as if you prayed a little bit. We'll see the footnotes on that. But you don't have the proper schar, reward for praying on time. What happens, again, this is intentionally. If intentionally, the half of the day, again, it's Shasmanis. So you have to always check your calendar. There's different websites or different calendars that you could have that will tell you the times. Because again, the times are not, half day is not 12 o'clock in the afternoon. It could be between anywhere between 11 to 1 o'clock. So you have to check. So you go on Chabad.org and you put in your city, and you could even put in your zip code, and it'll tell you what your zmanim are. So, but if you reach half the day, and intentionally you just were lazy, or whatever your reason is, you decided not to daven. You can't make up for that prayer. It's done, over. Well, I love Nemer, and on this person who's gone through intentionally half the day and has not prayed, it says mu'uvas. What is crooked, layuchaliskoin, cannot be straight. It's too late. You can't straighten it. V'im shagag oinenas. What happens if it was by mistake, or not even worse than a mistake? It was an oinus. You had no choice. There was no way for you to daven. Whatever that means, we'll get to that. That will be explained in chapter 89, which is I think this is a printing. He says, I'm not sure if he says here. Pay test in English. He says chapter 21. Which is a little better for us because we won't make it to chapter 89. So chapter 21, which we'll learn about that if you by mistake or if you have no choice, cannot daven by half day. There's a lot of times, again, you have to remember there's scenarios of airplane flying where time is moving fast, you're unable to pray. We'll learn all that. This is talking about the case of oinus or shaygig, where you have no choices. What are your options then? Okay. Let's first see the footnotes on this one. So he says the best is to daven when the sun shines, which is, he quotes a pasuk from Tehillim 72, verse 5. The time of davening. So what does he say over here? By daybreak. Again, we learned daybreak is alois hashachar. He says b'di'eved, which is if you prayed. So here he translates b'di'eved, if you prayed. But the ever doesn't only mean if you prayed, like you did it. It also means if you have no choice and you have to pray. So if you have it's not like you did it. I mean, the questions we have to get into, but if you have like you're about to get on a plane or something that you can't daven past, you can't wait till nates. And some people can't daven nates any days in the winter because of their job, etc. So he says, with the evid you could daven from Amidah Shachar, from when the day breaks. Okay, again, and you check your calendar when that is. Again, it's really Mishiyakir, when you could see, he doesn't mention Mishiyakir, but when you could see the definition of Mishiyakir again will be in your Zmanim of when you could put on your talis and film. Now, in theory, what he's saying in the Kitzur, you could daven without your talis and tefillin from Amidah Shachar, from daybreak, and as you're davening, you wait because you want to say Shema on the tefillin. So you could maybe try then to see if it's already Mishiyakir and put on your tefillin because you can't put on your tefillin before Mishiyakir. But he's saying you could start davening from Amidah Shachar. It's not the same time. Daybreak is a little earlier from Mishiyakir. Mishiyakir is when the word Mishiyakir means when you recognize, and we learned that before. When you could see things, recognize colors, or recognize people. So, and again, that time is in your Zmanim, right? So let's just give an example. Let's try to bring up Zmanim Seattle. Or Zmanim Yerushalayim. Let's go. So he says Zmanim Yerushalayim will be, let's say, so Alot HaShachar is today would be 4:59, daybreak, dawn. Earliest tefillin is not for 30 minutes, which is 5:31 today. Right, this is for Shabbos, but whatever, it's the same thing, pretty much close for Sunday. Sunrise itself is 6:15. So in theory, you could start davening at 4:59. You can't put on your tefillin until 5:31. And then Nates is really at 6:15, but if you can't wait till 6:15, you could start davening at 4:59. But you can't put on your tefillin still till 5:31. All right. So he says like this, footnote number 3. It's just he quotes the verse. Okay. Let's do one more law. Let's see if we can get one more law in. Unless anyone has any questions on this law, and then we'll stop here. Okay. Mishiagia litihilais lekel elyon, which is in the end of the final tefillah, the prayer we do before the Shemoneh Esrei, which is Goal Yisrael. So when you get to the words the tehillah kel elyon, these are the words of the prayer. Yamoid, you should already stand. V'yachanis atzmei, prepare yourself with tefillah Shemoneh Esrei for the prayer. V'yasir kichai v'niyai v'chol davar amvavel es machshavtoi, and you should rid yourself of saliva and phlegm, anything that would not make it a proper prayer, to not confuse your concentration when you daven. You walk 3 paces backwards. You continue the prayer until the word Goal Yisrael, which is the blessing of God, redeem Israel. You walk forward 3 paces. As if you're walking towards what you are, towards the king. And there should be no interruption between Geula and tefillah, between the Goal Yisrael and the prayer. You shouldn't answer the Kaddish or the Baruch Hu from when you say Goal Yisrael until you start the Shemoneh Esrei. Because we have to make sure that the prayer of redemption goes right into the prayer of the tefillah. And try to finish saying the words Goal Yisrael exactly as the Chazan, the one who leads the congregation, says the words Goal Yisrael. Why? If you finish it earlier and you're waiting for the Chazan to say it, you may have to answer Amen to his blessing. And you don't want to, because we don't want to have any interruption between Goal Yisrael and the Shemoneh Esrei. But you should not answer Amen, because if you say it together with the Chazan, there's never a question for you to answer Amen, because you don't say Amen on your own blessing. However, in the evening prayer, Ma'ariv, Kivan she'ein habracha shlefnei Shemoneh Esrei misayemes beGoal Yisrael, we anyways don't have a bracha of Goal Yisrael before the Shemoneh Esrei. Why? Because there's the Hashkivenu, another blessing in between. Then it's not so careful, because anyways we're not doing smicha geula l'tefillah. We do geula l'tefillah only by the shachris, the morning prayer. And then it has the same rules as we learned before about when you can make an interruption between sections of the prayer. Before you actually start the first blessing of the Shemoneh Esrei, the 18 blessings, we say the verse Hashem Sefasai Tiftach Ofi Yagit Yilasecha, which is the whole. That's what we're learning the Kitzur here. We're not learning the Talmud. There's all discussion. Why do we say that prayer? What is that prayer? How does that affect what we said before, that you have to have Geula next to Tefillah? But that's not what we're studying now. We're just telling us the law in the Kitzur. We say that Hashem Sefasai Tiftach. That's how we start the Shemoneh Esrei quietly. The Einei Hefsek. So he answers the question. It's not exactly a separation, it's part of the prayer. If people want to add another verse which says, for the name of God I call out, do not say that, because that will be interruption. You could say it by Musaf Mincha, because there we don't have the Goal Yisrael. Some say it before the Hashem Sefasai Tiftach. It's not our minhag, but maybe the others do have that minhag. Okay, let's just see if we get one footnote in. He says, before saying the tefillah L'el Elyon, praise to the Most High and Mighty. Let's see, we have number 5. Who redeems Israel, Goal Yisrael. Okay, 6. Try to say it together with the Chazan. However, if you finish before the Chazan, you should answer Amen to his bracha. So he says the psak. In the footnote, he says, what happens if you didn't say it together with the Chazan? You said Goal Yisrael first, and then the Chazan said Goal Yisrael. He says you should answer Amen to the bracha, but we try not to, so say it together with the Chazan. And footnote number 7 is Hashem Sefasai Tiftach. He quotes the verse, and over here he quotes the verse, when I proclaim Hashem's name. Okay, Any questions before we complete the class today?
Yeah.
No. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, I'm going to use this shul as an example. Moonkach, it's a Hasidic shul in Brooklyn. It's in Borough Park. And I've been there many times and I've seen that's like 3 o'clock or later, but before the sun goes down, they're putting on halachos and tefillin. I asked someone in the shul why they allow it, and they said, because my rabbi doesn't, he says better not to do it then, but you don't know. Maybe they were in the hospital with their parents and they had no other time to daven. So better that they daven with towels and tefillin than not. That was,
And this is after midday or
this is
before
like 3 o'clock or later.
in the morning, in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, it's saying putting on the talis and film we said is forbidden. Talis and film can be put on the whole day. There's some people
Okay.
have the custom if they'll put on talis and film for mincha. That's not our custom. And our custom would be to daven with the talis and film until the shkia for whatever reason you didn't daven. But what we're talking about is putting on the talis and tefillin before in the morning, before the Mishiakir. Means if you could start davening shacharis, you could start davening Shemoneh Esrei from Amidah Shachar, but he says but you can't put on tefillin until Mishiakir.
Okay, but so you're only talking about Shema, basically.
Actually, what he's talking about over here is the Shemoneh Esrei. He said what he quotes is you could start Shemoneh Esrei from Amidah Shachar. That's what he says. In this chapter, we're talking about not from Hod, we're talking about tefillah, which means when could you start Shemoneh Esrei? From Amidah Shachar. Amidah Shachar, like I showed you before, today in Jerusalem is 4:59, and Mishiakir is 5:31. So in theory, you can't put on your tefillin and talis because you're not allowed to put on your talis and tefillin until Mishiakir. But you can daven the Shemoneh Esrei, and which means everything before Shemoneh Esrei from Amidah Shachar.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
All right, everyone. Again, you have to ask your local rabbi how it works. I know, for instance, in Seattle, very rarely in the winter you have an opportunity to daven before to daven even at nets, because the winter. I think in Seattle you could get nets could be as early as late as 8 o'clock, and most people have a minyan at 7 o'clock. Okay, have a wonderful Shavua Tov and good vach to you all in the next class.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Welcome.